All right, so let's go ahead. What would be my A, B, and C values? So, Danny, what's A, B, and C? Yep, perfect. Now, one of these is your y-intercept. Which one of these is the y-intercept? Negative 33. So let's go ahead and answer that first. So our y-intercept is actually going to be at 0, negative 33. So we can answer that one. That's the easiest one to answer. C is your y-intercept. I think you left your binder. Is that your binder under the desk?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I couldn't remember who. I knew it's been there. I was like, I think that's second period. All right. So now let's find the axis of symmetry. So axis of symmetry is x equals the opposite of b divided by 2a. That's your equation. So if b is positive 18, the opposite of positive 18 is negative 18. Yep, you're right. Good job. And that's divided by 2 times a, which is negative 3. So we have negative 18 divided by negative 6. Go ahead and type that in your calculators and see what you get. And that would be your axis of symmetry. Three, yep. So x equals 3. That would be the axis of symmetry. So we have our y-intercept right here. And then we have our axis of symmetry right here. So now let's find our vertex. To find our vertex, we're going to take that 3 and put it into this equation where you see an x. So that would be, we got to find our y value. So the y value is equal to, and it's negative 3 parentheses squared plus 18 parentheses minus 33. So go ahead, use your calculator and type that in just like that to see what you get for your vertex. So you have to figure out your axis of symmetry, and then whatever you get for axis of symmetry, you put that back into your equation to find the y value of your vertex. Yes, Nehemiah?
I got it.
Negative 6. Anyone get negative 6? So that means your vertex, and you always write that as an ordered pair, that would be at positive 3 and negative 6. And that would be your 3 answers for our bell work. Any questions about our bell work? All right, so we're going to factor. Go ahead, take out your multiplication chart. That might help you. We're going to do a few of the questions on your handout. And then that'll be it for today. Today is the last day to turn in homework 2 for full credit.
It doesn't matter what time today, though, right? Like before school ends.
Technically, it's during the class period. However, you have an accommodation that you can turn yours in later.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. So let's go ahead and get started with number 1. Well, it's actually number 2 on the handout. So I'm actually skipping number 1. Let's go right to number 2. So we're going to factor this down. So let me just give you a little bit of a review for factoring. Go ahead and write this at the top of your page or somewhere. Whenever you factor, you take A times C, that goes on top of the X. B goes on the bottom. And we're going to factor using a box. And whenever you make your box, let's go ahead and write this template. The first term, which is ax squared, that always has to go in that square. And C has to go in this square. So just keep that in mind, because when we factor, this is how we're always going to do it. So let's get started with number 2. So I like to start by making my box. So let's make my box. Make your box. And I'm going to put n squared here and -5 here. Let's make our x. So in this quadratic, a is 1, b is -4, and c is -5. On top of the x, multiply a times c. So you have to multiply 1 times -5, and you put that right here. So 1 times -5 is -5. B is -4. So don't say it out loud. But we need to figure out two numbers that multiply to -5 but add to -4. If you look at your multiplication chart, you will notice that 5 only shows up in one spot. The only thing that multiplies to give you 5 is 1 times 5. But in order for us to get a -5, one of these has to be negative. So I'm going to tell you the trick. Whatever this sign is, this sign, which is negative, that's always going to match the sign of the biggest number. So because 5 is bigger than 1, I know that this 5 has to be negative. So now we're going to go and put that -5 and the +1 in the other two squares and take out your greatest common factors. So we're going to look at it 2 squares at a time. What do both of these squares have that I can take out? They both have a letter N. So I'm going to put that letter N right here. Both of these squares have a 1. Now this 1 is the number that goes into everything, right? So the only thing that I can take out of both of these squares is a 1. It has to be a +1 because the sign of this number has to match the sign of the square it touches. Now let's look at these two squares. So the only thing that those two squares have in common is an N. And notice how both of these squares have a -5. So the factors or the answers to question number 2 is n + 1 times n - 5. That is the answer. Any questions about how we work through number 2? All right, so let's skip to number 3. Let's look at question number 3. Again, I like to start by making my box. So I'm going to make my box. I don't know why I'm making a box so big. Hold on. Well, okay, it's still big, but that's okay. All right, so I'm making my box. X squared goes here. 35 goes here. So A is 1, B is 12, C is 35. So when you make your X, A times C is 1 times 35. 1 times 35 is 35. And B is 12. Don't say it out loud, but look at your multiplication chart. Find two numbers that multiply to 35 and add to 12. I think 35 only shows up one time on your chart though. So what are my two numbers that multiply to 35? Thumbs up if you know my two numbers. Just curious. A couple people, 4 people, 5 people. All right, anybody want to tell me what those numbers might be? Nehemiah?
7 and 5.
7 and 5. 7 times 5 is 35, and 7 plus 5 is 12. So we're going to put our 7 and our 5 in the other two squares. So if you put the 7 here and the 5 here, that would also be fine. Yeah. So let's go 2 squares at a time. Both of these squares have an x that we can take out. This bottom row, the only number that goes into both of these is a 5. 5 can be taken out of 5x, and 5 is also a factor of 35. So we're going to take out a 5. Has to be positive. This first column, we take out an x. The second column, we can take out a 7 because 7 goes into 35 and 5. So the factors will be x plus 7 times x plus 5. All right, any questions about that? Who remembers how to factor from integrated 2? Okay, good. So that means this chapter, this next piece will go a little easier because we got a lot of factoring now in this next unit. All right, so let's skip ahead to number 6. Just a couple more and then we'll be done for today. So, Sean, what's A, B, and C? All right. Go ahead and make your box. That 2b squared has to go here. And the 18 has to go here. And now we make our x. On top of the x is a times c. So pick up your calculator if you need to. Take 2 times 18. 2 times 18 and put that at the top. 36. B is negative 13. Don't say it out loud, but I want you to look at your chart. Try to find your two numbers that multiply to be a positive 36 and add to a negative 13. And I'm going to give you a hint. Both numbers have to be negative. That's the only way that you can get a positive on the top and a negative on the bottom. So you got to find two numbers that multiply to be a 36 but add to a negative 13. And if we think about 36, the numbers that multiply to give you 36 are 1 times 36, 2 times 18, 3 times 12, and 4 times 9, and 6 times 6. So there's a lot of numbers. But which one of those pairs will add to give you 13 though? Yep, the 4 and the 9. And they both have to be negative. So I want you to put your negative 4b and your negative 9b. Yes. Well, can you say that one more time? So it's always, if we go back, the number that goes on top of the x is a times c. Not c, but a times c. In these first examples, because a is 1, then you may think that it's just c, but it's really a times c. All right, in our first two, a was 1. So when we multiplied it, it looked like it was just a c, but it's really 2. Two numbers that you have to multiply to put on top. Okay, so let's go ahead and do this. Both of these numbers, oops, wrong thing. Both of these can be divided by 2, and we can also take out a b. So I'm going to take out a 2 and a b. The bottom row, 9 and 18, What number can go into 9 and 18? 9, yep. But we have to take out a negative 9 because it's touching a square that's negative. This has to be negative. So that means that my first factor is 2b minus 9. So now let's find our second factor. The only thing that both of these squares have in common is the letter b. All right, what about these two? What can I divide into 4 and 18? Negative, not negative 4. Negative 2. Because you can't divide 18 by 4. So we're going to take out a negative 2. So my second factor would be b minus 2. All right, let's go ahead and flip it over. And let's look at number 8. So for number 8, Thomas, what's A, B, and C? Yeah.
3 is A, 11 is B, and 6 is C.
Okay, good. So make your box. 3x squared goes here. 6 goes here. And now you're going to make your x. So Danny, what number should we put on top of the x? 18, because 3 times 6 is 18. Don't say it out loud. See if you can figure out our two numbers that multiply to 18 but add to 11. And just give me a thumbs up. I'm not gonna call on you unless you want to give me the numbers, but I just need to see how many of you are able to find these numbers. So who knows the numbers that multiply to 18 and add to 11? Okay, that's a lot of you. All right, that's good. Anybody want to volunteer those numbers? Isaiah.
Positive 9
+9
and 2.
and +2. So you're going to put a positive 9x and a positive 2x. So I'm going to give you a minute. I'm going to stop talking. Try to figure out your GCFs. So what would you take out in order to get your factors? See if you can. You try to do it on your paper, and then I'll put up my answer, and then we'll compare. Okay, so the top row, what can you take out of these two squares? 3 and 9 can both be divided by what? 3. So I'm going to take out a 3 and an x. The bottom row, the only thing I can take out is a 2. So that means my first factor is 3x plus 2. The first column, both of these squares have in common just an x. What about the second column? Show me with your fingers. What can you take out of 9 and 6? Yep, 3. Good job. All right, last one more, and then I'm just going to come around and see how. I'm not going to go through it. I want you to try to do this next one by yourself. And then that's it for today. All right, so the last one we're going to do together is 9. So take a minute and try to do 9. So look at all the places you see 30. I see a 30 in the 2s. I see 30 in 3s. I see 30 in the 5s. I agree with your numbers. Yeah, off to a good start. Yep, I agree with your numbers. So these will multiply to be positive 30. So it's not those two numbers. I'm really just trying to see if we found our numbers. So those wouldn't be the right numbers. Because at the top of the X is 3 times negative 10. And what's 3 times negative 10? That's a negative 30, yeah. Yeah, so remember, there should be a negative 30 on top of the X and a negative 13 on the bottom of your X. So these two will multiply to be a positive 30. So it's not those are the right numbers. So I'll give you a hint, the numbers are not 10 and 3.
Oh, okay.
I'll be back around in a second. Numbers are not 10 and 3. Nope, not 10 and 3. Because see at the top, when you take 3 times negative 10, you get 3 times negative 10 is a positive 30. Yeah, all right. Not bad, actually. Let's go through it together and then we'll end there for today. So A is +3. B is -13. C is -10. So on top of the X, we have a -30. And on the bottom of my X, I have a -13. So a lot of people pick these two numbers. But the problem is that these two numbers, when you multiply it, they would give you a +30. So that wouldn't work. So what would be the right two numbers that we should use? -15 and +2. So let's go ahead and make our box. We have our 3x² here and our -10 here. And then I'm going to put my -15x here and our 2x here. When you're doing this on your own, if you have these in opposites, that's still okay. So my first column, I could take out a 3x. The second column, I could take out a +2. So that means my first factor is 3x plus 2. The top row, I could take out an x. The bottom row, I could take out a -5. So that would be your answers. Who had that? And it doesn't matter if you had the x minus, oops. It doesn't matter if you wrote the x minus 5 first. As long as you have these two, it is correct. Yes. Oh, I thought you had your hand up. No? Oh, okay. All right. Homework 2 is due today. It's the last day to get full credit. So use this time to finish it out. If you have questions, you can ask me about it. Tomorrow we'll get back to our notes.